Sarasvati continued. Leela, your house, you, I and all this is pure consciousness, naught else. Your house was itself in the house of the holy man Vasistha. In the space of his jiva existed the rivers and the mountains and so on. Even after the creation of all this in the holy man's house, it remained as it was before. Indeed, in every atom there are worlds within worlds. Leela asked. O goddess, you said that it was only 8 days ago that the holy man had died, and yet my husband and I have lived for a long time. How can you reconcile this discrepancy? Sarasvati said. O Leela, just as space does not have a fixed span, time does not have a fixed span either. Just as the world and its creation are mere appearances, a moment and an epoch are also imaginary, not real. In the twinkling of an eye the jiva undergoes the illusion of the death experience, forgets what happened before that, and in the infinite consciousness thinks I am this etc., and I am his son, I am so many years old, etc. There is no essential difference between the experiences of this world and those of another, all this being the thought forms in the infinite consciousness. They are like two waves in the same ocean. Since these worlds were never created, they will never cease to be, such is the law. Their real nature is consciousness. Even as in a dream there is birth, death and relationship all in a very short time, and even as a lover feels that a single night without his beloved is an epoch, the jiva thinks of experienced and non-experienced objects in the twinkling of an eye. And, immediately thereafter, he imagines those things, the world, to be real. Even those things which he had not experienced nor seen present themselves before him as in a dream. This world and this creation is nothing but memory, dream, distance, measures of time like a moment and an age. All these are hallucinations. This is one kind of knowledge, memory. There is another which is not based on memory of past experience. This is the fortuitous meeting of an atom and consciousness which is then able to produce its own effects. Liberation is the realization of the total non-existence of the universe as such. This is different from the mere denial of the existence of the ego and the universe. The latter is only half knowledge. Liberation is to realize that all this is pure consciousness. Leela asked. O goddess, without prior hallucination how was the creation of the holy man and his wife possible? Sarasvati said. Indeed, that was due to the thought form of Brahma, the creator. He himself had no hidden thought forms, memory, for before creation there was dissolution and at that time the creator had attained liberation. At the beginning of this epoch, someone assumes the role of creator and thinks I am the new creator. This is pure coincidence, even as one sees a crow alighting on a palm tree and the coconut falling, though these two are independent of each other. Of course, do not forget that even though all this seems to happen, there is no creation. The one infinite consciousness alone is thought form or experience. There is no cause and effect relationship. These, cause and effect, are only words, not facts. The infinite consciousness is forever in infinite consciousness. Leela said. O goddess, your words are truly enlightening. However, since I have never been exposed to them before, the wisdom is not well grounded. I wish to see the original house of the holy Vasistha. Sarasvati said. O Leela, give up this form of yours and attain the pure spiritual insight. For only Brahman can really see or realize Brahman. My body is made of pure light, pure consciousness. Your body is not. With this body of yours you cannot even visit the places of your own imagination, then how can you enter the field of another's imagination? But if you attain the body of light, you will immediately see the holy man's house. Affirm to yourself, I shall leave my body here and take a body of light. With that body, like the scent of incense, I shall go to the house of the holy man. Even as water mixes with water, you will become one with the field of consciousness. By the persistent practice of such meditation, even your body will become one of pure consciousness and subtlety. For, I see even this my body as consciousness. You do not, for you see the world of matter, even as an ignorant man might mistake a precious stone for a pebble. Such ignorance arises of its own accord, but is dispelled by wisdom and inquiry. In fact, even such ignorance does not exist. There is neither unwisdom, nor ignorance, neither bondage, nor liberation. There is but one pure consciousness. Sarasvati said, Dear Leela, in dream, the dream body appears to be real, but when there is an awakening to the fact of dream, the reality of that body vanishes. Even so, the physical body which is sustained by memory and latent tendencies is seen to be unreal when they are seen to be unreal. At the end of the dream, you become aware of the physical body. At the end of these tendencies, you become aware of the ethereal body. When the dream ends, deep sleep ensues. When the seeds of thought perish, you are liberated. In liberation the seeds of thought do not exist. If the liberated sage appears to live and to think, he only appears to do so, like a burnt cloth lying on the floor. This is, however, not like deep sleep nor unconsciousness, in both of which the seeds of thought lie hidden. By the persistent practice, abhyasa, egotism is quieted. Then you will naturally rest in your consciousness, and the perceived universe heads towards the vanishing point. What is called practice? Thinking of that alone, speaking of that, conversing of that with one another, utter dedication to that one alone, this is called abhyasa or practice by the wise. When one's intellect is filled with beauty and bliss, when one's vision is broad, when passion for sensual enjoyment is absent in one, that is practice. When one is firmly established in the conviction that this universe has never even been created, and therefore it does not exist as such, and when thoughts like this is world, this I am do not arise at all in one, that is abhyasa or practice. It is then that attraction and repulsion do not arise. The overcoming of attraction and repulsion by the use of will force is austerity, not wisdom. At this stage, evening set in, and the court dispersed. Early next morning the court assembled, and Vasistha continued his discourse. Vasistha continued. O Rama, Sarasvati and Queen Leela immediately sat in deep meditation or nirvikalpa samadhi. They had risen above body consciousness. Because they had given up all notions of the world, it had completely vanished in their consciousness. They roamed freely in their wisdom bodies. Though it seemed that they had traveled millions of miles in space, they were still in the same room but on another plane of consciousness. Vasistha continued. Holding each other's hands, Sarasvati and Leela slowly ascended to far distant scenes in space. This space was intensely pure and totally empty. They rested on top of the Mount Mu, the axis of the Earth. They saw countless interesting sights as they proceeded away from the orbit of the Moon. They roamed within huge cloud formations in space. They entered infinite space, the womb and source of infinite beings in infinite worlds. They saw the 7 great mountains in the cosmos which were radiant like the fire of dissolution. They saw golden plains near Mu, and they saw the densest form of darkness. They saw siddhas, beings with supernatural powers. They saw crowds and crowds of demons, goblins and other spirits. They saw space vehicles come and go everywhere. They saw celestial nymphs sing and dance. They saw a variety of birds and also animals. They saw angels and gods. They saw great yogis endowed with all auspicious qualities. They saw the abode of the Creator, the abode of Shiva, and others. Like a couple of mosquitoes they roamed all these plains. Note: the description is graphic and detailed in the text. In short, they saw all that was already in the mind of Sarasvati and which Sarasvati wanted to show to Queen Leela. It was like the lotus of the heart, with the directions for its petals, the nether world for the mud in which it grows, held by the divine serpent which is the root. In this lotus, they saw what is known as Jambudvipa, in which there are very many countries and continents. It is surrounded by a salty ocean. Beyond that is Sakadvipa, surrounded by an ocean of milk. Beyond that is Kizadvipa with an ocean of curd. Then Kraunkadvipa and an ocean of ghee. Then Salmaladvipa surrounded by an ocean of wine. Then Gomadadvipa surrounded by an ocean of sugarcane juice. Then there is Puskaradvipa surrounded by an ocean of sweet water. Then there is a cosmic hole. Beyond that is the Lokloka mountain shining resplendently. Beyond that is the infinite forest, etc. Lastly there was infinite space, sheer emptiness. Note, compare with the description in Bhagavatam. Having thus seen the oceans, mountains, the protectors of the universe, the kingdom of the gods, the sky and the very bowels of the earth, Leela saw her own house. Vasistha continued. O Rama, the two ladies then entered into the holy man's house. The whole family was in mourning. On account of their grief the house itself had a depressing atmosphere. By the practice of the yoga of pure wisdom Leela had acquired that faculty by which her thoughts instantly materialized. She wished that these, my relations, should see me and Sarasvati as if we are ordinary womenfolk. They appeared so to the mourning family. But the two ladies were of supernatural radiance which dispelled the gloom that pervaded the house. The eldest son of the departed holy couple welcomed the two ladies, taking them to be two angels of the forest. He said to them, O angels of the forest, surely you have come here to relieve us of our grief in our bereavement. For such is the nature of divinities, they are eager to relieve the distress of others. The two ladies asked the young man, Tell us the cause of your sorrow which seems to afflict all these people here. The son of the holy couple replied, O ladies, in this very house there lived a pious man and his devoted wife, who were both devoted to a righteous life. Recently, they abandoned their children and grandchildren, their house and their cattle, and ascended to heaven. Therefore, to us this whole world appears to be empty. Look, O ladies, even the birds are crying for the departed ones. Even the gods are crying in grief, raining tears. The trees are shedding tears every morning, the dewdrops. Abandoning this earth, my parents have surely gone away to the world of the immortals. Hearing this, Leela laid her hand on the young man's head. Instantly he was relieved of his sorrow. Seeing this, all the others were also relieved of sorrow. Rama asked, O Holy One, why is it that Leela did not appear to her own son as his real mother? Vasistha replied, Rama, he who has realized the unreality of material substances sees only the one undivided consciousness everywhere. A dreamer does not see this world, a man in deep coma may even see the other world. Leela had realized the truth. He who has realized the truth that Brahman, the Self, etc., are all one infinite consciousness, unto him where is son, friend, wife, etc. Even her laying her hand on the young man's head was the spontaneous expression of Brahman's grace. Vasistha continued. Having thus blessed the family of the deceased holy man, the two ladies disappeared. The consoled members of the family returned to their abodes. Leela turned to Sarasvati to ask her a question. In this state, of course, their bodies were made neither of matter like earth nor psychosomatic factors like life breath. It was like two dream objects conversing with each other. Leela asked Sarasvati, how was it that we were seen by this family of mine here, and we were not seen by my husband who was ruling a kingdom when we visited him? Sarasvati answered, then you are still clinging to your notion I am Leela. Now you have overcome that body consciousness. Till the consciousness of duality is completely dispelled, you cannot act in the infinite consciousness, you cannot even understand it, even as one standing in the sun does not know the coolness of the shade of a tree. But, now if you go to your husband, you will be able to deal with him as before. Leela said, O divinity! It was here itself that my husband was the holy man and I was his wife, here again I was his queen, here he died and here again he rules now. Pray, take me where I can see him. Sarasvati said, Leela, you and your husband have been through many incarnations, 3 of which you now know. In this incarnation, the king has slipped deep into the snare of worldliness and he thinks I am the Lord, I am strong, I am happy, etc. Though from the spiritual standpoint the whole universe is experienced here, from the physical point of view, millions of miles separate the planes. In the infinite consciousness, in every atom of it, universes come and go like particles of dust in a beam of sunlight that shines through a hole in the roof. These come and go like ripples on the ocean. Leela. reminisced, O divinity. Since emerging as a reflection in the infinite consciousness, I have had 800 births. Today I see this. I have been a nymph, a vicious human woman, a serpent, a forest tribal woman, and on account of evil deeds I became a creeper, and by the proximity of sages I became a sage's daughter. I became a king, and on account of evil deeds done then, I became a mosquito, a bee, a deer, a bird, a fish, and again I became a celestial, after which I became a tortoise, and a swan, and I became a mosquito again. I have also been a celestial nymph when other celestials, males, used to fall at my feet. Just as the scales of balance seesaw constantly, I have also been caught up in the seesaw of this repetitive existence, samsara. Rama asked, Holy Sir, how was it possible for the two ladies to travel to distant galaxies in the universe, and how did they overcome the numerous barriers on the way? Vasistha replied, O Rama, where is universe, where are galaxies, where are barriers? The two ladies remained in the queen's inner apartment. It was there that the holy man Vasistha was ruling as King Vijayaratha. It was he who was King Padma before. All this happened in pure space. There is no universe, no distance, no barriers. Conversing with each other, the two ladies emerged from the room and proceeded towards a village on top of a mountain. The beauty and the glory of that mountain are indescribable. All its houses were literally covered with flowers that continually dropped from the trees. Young women slept in their rooms on beds made of clouds. The houses were illuminated by lightning. On account of the intensity of her practice of the yoga of wisdom, Leela had acquired full knowledge of the past, present and future. She recollected the past and said to Sarasvati, O divinity, some time ago I was an aged woman and I lived here. I was devoted to righteousness in every way, but I had never practiced inquiry into the nature of the self. Who am I? What is this world? My husband was also a good, righteous and learned man, but his inner intelligence had also not been awakened. We were exemplars in conduct, and by such conduct we taught others how they should live. After saying this, Leela showed to Sarasvati her previous dwelling, and continued, See, this is my favorite calf. On account of my separation, it does not even eat grass and has been constantly weeping for the past 8 days. In this place, my husband ruled the world. Because of his strong willpower and since he was determined to be a great king soon, he had indeed become an emperor within the short span of 8 days, though it looked like a long time. Just as air moves about unseen in space, even so in the space of this house, my husband lives, unseen. Here, in the space of the size of a thumb, we imagined the kingdom of my husband to be 1,000,000 square miles. O divinity, surely both my husband and I are of pure consciousness, yet, on account of the mysterious illusory power Maya, my husband's kingdom appears to encompass hundreds of mountains. This is truly marvelous. I wish to enter into the capital city where my husband rules. Come, let us go there, for what is impossible of achievement to the industrious? Vasistha continued. Along with Sarasvati, the Queen Leela rose into the sky. They went beyond the region of the pole star, beyond the realms of the sages of perfection, even beyond the realm of the gods, of Brahma, the Creator, Goloka and the realms of Shiva and of the Manis and of the liberated ones. From the Leela saw that even the sun and the moon were far below, and were barely visible. Sarasvati said to Leela, Dear one, you have to go beyond even this to the very top of the head of creation. All that you have seen is just a few particles that have emanated from there. Soon they had reached this summit, for there will become adamantine whose consciousness is pure and unveiled. There, Leela saw that this creation was enveloped by layers of water, fire, air and space, and beyond that was pure consciousness. This supreme infinite consciousness is pure, peaceful, free from illusions, established in its own glory. In that Leela saw countless creations floating like dust particles in light. The self-projections of the jivas dwelling in those universes gave them their forms and nature. Because of the essential nature of this infinite consciousness, all these keep arising and again arising, and by their own thought force, return to a state of tranquility. All this is like the spontaneous play of a child. Rama asked, what do people mean by above, below and so on, when only the infinite is truth? Vasistha replied, O Rama, just as when little ants crawl all over a round rock, what is under their feet is always below and what is behind their back is always above, even so people talk of these directions. Of those countless universes, O Rama, in some there are only plants, some have Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra and others as the presiding deities, and some have none at all. In some there are only animals and birds, in some there is only an ocean, some are solid rocks, some are inhabited only by worms, some are pervaded by dense darkness, in some gods dwell, some are forever illumined. Some seem to be heading towards dissolution, some seem to be falling in space towards destruction. Since consciousness exists everywhere forever, creation of these universes and their dissolution also goes on everywhere forever. All these are held together by a mysterious omnipresent power. Rama, everything exists in the one infinite consciousness, everything arises from it. It alone is everything. Vasistha continued. Having seen all this, Leela saw the inner apartment of the palace where the corpse of the king lay buried under a heap of flowers. There arose in her an intense wish to behold her husband's other life. Instantly, she broke through the summit of the universe and entered into the realm where her husband now ruled. At the same time, a mighty king who ruled over the Sindhu region was laying a siege to her husband's kingdom. As the two ladies were coursing the space above the battlefield, they encountered countless celestials who had assembled there to witness the battle and the exploits of the great heroes. Rama asked, Holy One, tell me, who is a hero among soldiers and who is a beast or a war criminal? Vasistha replied, O Rama, he who fights a battle which is in accordance with the scriptural injunctions, on behalf of the righteous king of unblemished conduct, whether he dies in battle or wins, he is a hero. He who fights for an unrighteous monarch, who tortures people and mutilates their bodies, even if he dies fighting in battle, he is a beast or criminal and goes to hell. He who fights to protect the cattle, holy men, friends, or they who have taken his asylum, he is an ornament of heaven. On the other hand, they who fight for a king who delights in harassing the people, whether he be a king or not, or just a landlord, they go to hell. Only the hero who dies in battle goes to heaven. They who fight unrighteously, even if they die in battle, do not go to heaven. O Rama, still standing in the sky, Leela saw the two great armies closing in on each other, ready to engage themselves in battle. Note: there follows a graphic description of the state of readiness of the armies, and of the different formations of the battalions, as also of the fierceness of the battle, and the gruesome scene of destruction that followed it. All these are omitted in this translation. S.V. As evening set in, Leela's husband held a council with his ministers concerning the events of the morning, and then he went to sleep. The two ladies left the place where they stood watching the fierce battle and traveling like a breath of air, entered into the apartment where the king was asleep. Rama asked, Holy One, the body seems to be so large and heavy, how does it enter through a minute hole? Vasistha replied, O Rama, indeed it is impossible for one who is rooted in the idea that he is a physical body to pass through a subtle hole or tube. It is the innermost conviction that I am the body which is obstructed thus in its movement that in fact manifests as such obstruction. When the former is absent, the latter is absent, too. Just as water ever remains water and flows down, and fire does not abandon its nature of rising up, consciousness remains forever consciousness. But he who has not understood this does not experience its subtlety or true nature. As is his understanding, so is his mind, for it is the understanding that is the mind, yet its direction can be changed by great effort. Normally, one's actions are in accordance with one's mind, that is, one's understanding. But he who knows that his body is ethereal, how can his movement be obstructed? In truth, everyone's body everywhere is pure consciousness, but on account of an idea that arises in someone's heart, there seems to be all this coming and going. For The same infinite consciousness is also the individual consciousness, mind, and the cosmic space, material. Therefore the ethereal body can enter anything anywhere, and it goes where the wish of its heart leads. O Rama, everyone's consciousness is of this nature and power. In everyone's consciousness there is a different idea of the world. Death and such other experiences are like cosmic dissolution, the night of cosmic consciousness. When that comes to an end, everyone wakes up to his own mental creation, which is the materialization of his ideas, notions and delusions. Even as the cosmic being creates the universe after the cosmic dissolution, the individual creates his own world after his death. However, divinities like Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, as also holy sages, attain final liberation during cosmic dissolution, and their creation of the next cycle is not from memory. In the case of other beings, the new creation after the death in the previous one is conditioned by the impressions left in the mind by the various experiences during that lifespan. Vasistha continued. Immediately after death, the state in which it may be said that one is neither here nor there, when the consciousness, as it were, slightly opens the eyes though it seems not to do so, that state is known as pradhana, or the material or inert state of consciousness. It is also known as ethereal nature, unmanifest nature, and it is regarded both as sentient and insentient. It is this which is responsible both for memory and its absence, and therefore for the next birth. When that ethereal nature becomes awakened, and when in its consciousness the ego sense manifests itself, it gives rise to the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, space-time continuum, and all the rest of the material needed for physical birth and existence. These then condense into their material counterparts. During dreaming and waking states they give rise to the feeling of a physical body. But in fact all this constitutes the ethereal body of the jiva. When the idea I am the body becomes deeply ingrained, this same ethereal body develops the physical characteristics of a body, like the eyes, etc. Though all this happens only like vibrations or movements in air. Even if all these appear to be real, they are as unreal as the experience of sexual pleasure in a dream. Wherever one dies, there itself the jiva sees all this happening. In that space, in that field of consciousness itself, he imagines this is the world, this am I, and, believing that he is born, he experiences the world which is nothing but space. He the jiva is space, too. He thinks he is my father, she is my mother, this is my wealth, I have done this wonderful deed, alas, I have sinned. He imagines I have become a small child, and now I have become a youth, and sees all these in his heart. This forest, known as creation, arises in the heart of every jiva. Wherever a person dies, there and then he sees this forest. In this manner, countless worlds born in the consciousness of individual jivas have in time vanished. Even so countless Brahmas, Rudras, Vaishnus and sons have vanished. In this manner, the illusory perception of creation has taken place countless times, is taking place now, and will take place in the future. For all this is non-different from the movement of thought which, again, is not independent of the infinite consciousness. In reality, what is mental activity but consciousness, and that consciousness is the supreme truth? Vasistha continued. The 2 ladies entered the apartment of the king like 2 divinities, resplendent like 2 moons. By their grace the king's attendants were fast asleep. As they took their seats, the king awoke and beheld them. He sat down and worshipped their lotus-like feet with flowers. Sarasvati wished that his minister should acquaint Leela with the king's ancestry. By her will, the minister awoke. When Sarasvati asked the king who he was, the minister informed the ladies that he was a descendant of the great king Ikshvaku, that his father was Nabhoratha, who when the son was 10 years old had entrusted the kingdom to him and retired to the forest to lead a spiritual life. The king's name was Vijayaratha. Sarasvati then blessed Vijayaratha by laying her hand on his head and inspired him to recollect the facts of his own previous lives. Instantly, the king remembered everything and asked Sarasvati, "O goddess, how is it that though it is hardly 1 day since I died, It seems that I have lived in this body a full 70 years, and how is it that I remember all the things that happened when I was young in this lifespan?" Sarasvati replied, "O king, at the very moment of your death and in the very place of your death, all this that you are seeing here manifested. All this is where the holy man Vasistha lived, in the village on the hill. That is his world, and in that world is the world of King Padma, and in that world of King Padma is the world that you are in. Living in it you think these are my relations, these are my subjects, these are my ministers, these are my enemies. You think that you are ruling, you are engaged in religious rites. You think that you have been fighting with your enemies and you were defeated by them. You think you are seeing us, worshipping us, and that you are receiving enlightenment from us. You think I have overcome all sorrow and I enjoy supreme bliss, I shall be established in the realization of the Absolute. All this took no time to happen, even as in no time during a dream a whole life's drama is enacted. In reality, you are unborn nor do you die. You see all this, as it were, though you do not see, for when all this is naught other than the infinite consciousness, who sees what?" Vijayaratha asked, "Then, are not these, my ministers, independent beings? To the enlightened person there is only one infinite consciousness, and there is no notion of I am or these are." While Vasistha said this, another day came to an end. Sarasvati continued. To an immature and childish person who is confirmed in his conviction that this world is real, it continues to be real, even as a child who believes in a ghost is haunted by it throughout his life. If a person is enamored of the appearance of the bracelet, he does not see that it is just gold. He who sees the glory of palaces, elephants and cities does not see the infinite consciousness which alone is true. This universe is but a long dream. The ego sense and also the fancy that there are others, are as real as dream objects. The sole reality is the infinite consciousness which is omnipresent, pure, tranquil, omnipotent, and whose very body and being is absolute consciousness, therefore not an object, not knowable. Wherever this consciousness manifests in whatever manner, it is that. Hence when the seer fancies seeing a human being happens there. Because the substratum, the infinite consciousness, is real, all that is based on it acquires reality, though the reality is of the substratum alone. This universe and all beings in it are but a long dream. To me you are real, and to you I am real, even so the others are real to you or to me. And, this relative reality is like the reality of the dream objects. Ramu asked, Holy One, in the case of a city which appeared in one's dream, it continues to be if it is a real city. Is this what you imply in your teaching? Vasistha replied. You are right, O Rama. Since the dream of a city etc., is based on the real substratum of infinite consciousness, these dream objects appear to be real. But, then there is no real difference between the waking state of consciousness and the dream state. What is real in the one is unreal in the other, hence, both these states are essentially of the same nature. Therefore, the objects of the waking or the dreaming consciousness are equally unreal, except for the infinite consciousness on which they are all superimposed. After having imparted this teaching to the king, Sarasvati blessed him and said, May all auspiciousness attend you. You have seen what is to be seen. Give us leave to go. Vijayaratha said, Soon, O goddess, I shall go from here, just as one goes from one dream to another in sleep. Pray, grant that my ministers and my virgin daughter may go with me. Sarasvati granted his prayer. Sarasvati said, O king, you shall die in this war and then you will regain your previous kingdom. After your death in this body, you will come over to the previous city with your daughter and your ministers. We too shall go now as we came, and all you will of course follow us in due course, for the nature of the motion of a horse, an elephant and a camel is different. Vasistha continued. Even as Sarasvati was saying this to the king, a royal messenger rushed in to announce that the enemy forces had entered the capital and were destroying it. There was an incendiary raid in progress, and the entire city was ablaze. The two ladies, The king and his ministers moved to a window to witness that dreadful scene. Looting of the city had commenced, and the robbers were yelling fiercely everywhere. The entire city was enveloped in dense smoke. Fire was raining from the sky. Anti-aircraft missiles described half-moon-shaped flaming streaks in the sky. Heavy rock-like missiles, bombs, were falling on the houses, destroying them and the roads around. The king and the others heard the pitiable cries of the citizens. Everywhere there was weeping and wailing, the heart-rending cries of women and children. Someone was crying, "Oh dear, this woman has lost her father, mother, brother and her little infant, though she has not perished. The tragedy of her life is burning her heart." Another shouted, "Get out of that house quickly, it is about to collapse." Yet another, "Look, bombs and weapons rain into every house." Missiles were raining like the downpour that precedes cosmic dissolution. All the trees around the houses had been burnt and the whole place looked desolate. What looked like elephants had been propelled into the air from the battlefield and they were raining fire on the city. And, there were roadblocks everywhere. Bound by attachment, men tarried in burning houses looking for their wives and children. Even women of the royal household were being dragged about by the invading soldiers. Weeping and wailing, these noble ladies did not know what to do. They cried, "Alas, who will help us in this terrible situation?" And they were surrounded by soldiers. Note: the description is astonishing and resembles modern warfare and bombing of civilians. Such is the glory of sovereignty, kingdoms and empires. Vasistha continued. In the meantime, the queen arrived there. The lady-in-waiting announced her to the king. She said, "Your Majesty, all the other ladies of the harem have been violently dragged away by the enemy. From this indescribable calamity that has befallen us, only your Majesty can redeem us." The king bowed to Sarasvati and excused himself. "I shall myself go to the battlefront, O goddess, to deal with the enemy, and this, my wife, will wait upon you during that time." The enlightened Leela was amazed to see that the queen was a complete replica of herself. She asked Sarasvati, "O divinity, how is it that she is exactly what I am? Whatever I was in my own youth, she is now. What is the secret of this? Also, all these ministers, etc., who are here, are the same that were there, in our palace. If they are but a reflection or the objects of our fancy, are they sentient and are they also endowed with consciousness?" Sarasvati replied, "O Leela, whatever vision arises within oneself, that is immediately experienced. Consciousness, as subject, itself becomes, as it were, the object of knowledge. When in consciousness the image of the world arises, at that very instant, it becomes so. Time, space, duration and objectivity do not arise from matter, for then they would be material. What is reflected in one's consciousness shines outside also. What is regarded as the real objective world experienced in the waking state is no more real than that experienced during sleep, dream. During sleep, the world does not exist, and during the waking state, the dream does not exist. Even so, death contradicts life. While living, death is non-existent, and in death, life is non-existent. Because that which holds together either experience is absent in the other. One cannot say that either is real, or unreal, but one can only say that their substratum alone is real. The universe exists in Brahman only as a word, an idea. It is neither real nor unreal, just as a snake in the rope is neither real nor unreal. Even so is the existence of the jiva. This jiva experiences its own wishes. It fancies that it experiences what it had experienced before, and some others are new experiences. They are similar at times and dissimilar at times. All these experiences, though essentially unreal, appear to be real. Such is the nature of these ministers and others. Even so this Leela exists as the product of the reflection in consciousness. Even so are you, me and all others. Know this and rest in peace. The second Leela said to Sarasvati, "O divinity, I used to worship Sarasvati and she used to appear to me in my dreams. You look exactly like her. I presume that you are Sarasvati. I humbly beg of you to grant me a boon. When my husband dies on the battlefield, may I accompany him to whichever realm he goes, in this very body of mine." Sarasvati replied, "O dear lady, you have worshipped me for a long time with intense devotion, therefore, I grant you the boon sought by you." The first Leela thereupon said to Sarasvati, "Truly, your words never fail, your wish always comes true. Pray, tell me why you did not allow me to travel from one plane of consciousness to another with the same body." Sarasvati replied, "My dear Leela, I do not really do anything to anyone. Every jiva earns its own state by its own deeds. I am merely the deity presiding over the intelligence of every being. I am the power of its consciousness and its life force. Whatever form the energy of the living being takes within itself, that alone comes to fruition in course of time. You longed for liberation, and you obtained it. You may consider it the fruit of your austerity or worship of the deity, but it is consciousness alone that bestows the fruit upon you, even as the fruit that seems to fall from the sky really falls from the tree." Vasistha continued. As they were talking among themselves like this, the king Vijayaratha ascended his resplendent chariot and proceeded to the battlefront. Unfortunately, he had not assessed the relative strength of his and the enemy's forces right up to the moment he actually entered into the enemy ranks. The two Leelas, Sarasvati, as also the princess who had received the blessings of Sarasvati, were watching the terrible war from their apartment in the palace. The sky was crowded with the missiles from both the armies. The battle cries of the warriors were heard everywhere. There was a pall of smoke and dust over the entire city. Even as the king Vijayaratha entered the ranks of the enemy, there was an intense tut-tut sound of intense crossfire. As the missiles collided, there were sounds like cut-cut, tuk-tuk, junjhun. The second Leela asked Sarasvati, "O goddess, please tell me, why is it that though we are blessed by you, my husband cannot win the battle?" Sarasvati replied, "No doubt, I was adored by King Vijayaratha for a considerable time, but he did not pray for victory in battle. Being the consciousness that dwells in the understanding of every person, I bestow upon that person that which he seeks. Whatever it be that a person asks of me, I bestow upon him that fruit. It is but natural that fire gives you heat. He had asked for liberation, and he shall attain liberation. On the other hand, the king of Sindhu worshipped me, and prayed for victory in battle. Hence, the king Vijayaratha will be slain in battle, and he will rejoin you both and in course of time will attain liberation. This king of Sindhu will win the war and will rule the country as the victorious monarch." Vasistha continued. As the ladies were witnessing the battle, the sun rose in the eastern horizon, as if eager to witness the concluding phase of this terrible battle. Surrounded by 1,000 soldiers each, the two kings fought each other. Their missiles had several different shapes and sizes. Some of them, though they were single-headed when they left the ground, multiplied into 1,000 in the air and rained literally in tens of thousands when they hit their target. Both the kings were well matched in strength and valor. Vijayaratha's was inborn, while the strength of the enemy was derived from a boon he had obtained from Lord Narayana. While they fought, their armies watched dumbfounded. At one stage, when it looked as though Vijayaratha was winning, the second Leela was highly elated and pointed him out to Sarasvati, but the very next moment, the enemy emerged unscathed. For every deadly missile of one the other used a counter-missile. The missile that created depression was countered by one that inspired the warriors. The serpent missile had its antidote. The water missile was met with the fire missile. And the Vishnu missile was used by both the kings. Both the kings lost their vehicles, and they continued to fight standing on the ground. As Vijayaratha was about to ascend a new one, he was cut down by the king of Sindhu. Vijayaratha's body was soon brought to the palace which the pursuing enemy could not enter on account of Sarasvati's presence. Vasistha continued. Soon after the king Vijayaratha fell, there was utter post-war confusion and chaos in the city. The king of Sindhu announced that his son would be the new ruler. There was great rejoicing among his subjects, and his ministers quickly got ready for the coronation. Immediately the new administration proclaimed martial law in the new state, which restored peace and order to it. Seeing Vajraratha fall, the second Leela fell down unconscious. The first Leela said to Sarasvati, "O goddess, see, this my husband is about to give up the ghost." Sarasvati said, "Dear one, all this terrible war, this destruction and death, are as real as a dream, for there is neither a kingdom nor the earth. All this took place in the house of the holy man Vasistha on top of the hill. This palace and this battlefield and all the rest of it is nowhere but the inner apartments of your own palace. In fact, the entire universe is there. For, within the house of the holy man is the world of the king Padma, and within the palace of that king in that world is all that you have seen here. All this is mere fancy, hallucination. What is the sole reality, which is neither created nor destroyed. It is that infinite consciousness that is perceived by the ignorant as the universe. Just as a whole city exists within the dreamer, the three worlds exist in a small atom. Surely, there are atoms in those worlds, and each one of those atoms also contains the three worlds. The other Leela who fell down unconscious has already reached that world in which your husband Padma's body is lying." Leela asked, "O goddess, tell me, how did she go there already, and what are the people there telling her?" Sarasvati replied, "Just as both of you are the fancied objects of the king, even so the king himself and I are dream objects. One who knows this gives up looking for objects of perception. In the infinite consciousness we have created each other in our fancy. The other youthful Leela was indeed yourself. She worshipped me and prayed that she would never be widowed, hence, before the king Vajraratha died she left this place. Dear one, you are all individualized cosmic consciousness, but I am the cosmic consciousness, and I make all these things happen." Vasistha continued. O Rama, the second Leela who had obtained a boon from Sarasvati rose into the sky and met her daughter. The girl introduced herself to Leela. And, Leela requested her to guide her to where her husband the king was. The girl thereupon flew away with her mother. First, they passed through the region of the clouds, then they passed through the region of air. Beyond that they went through the orbit of the sun into the starry heaven. They proceeded still further to the realms of Brahma the Creator, Vishnu, and Shiva, and after all that into the summit of the universe. They were able to do all this even as the coolness of ice is able to radiate from the ice jar without breaking it. Of course, Leela, who had an ethereal body composed of materialized thought, experienced all this within herself. Passing beyond even this universe, Leela crossed over the oceans and other elements that envelop this universe, and entered into the infinite consciousness. In that infinite consciousness there are countless universes which do not know of one another's existence. Leela entered one of those universes in which lay the body of King Padma covered with a heap of flowers. She again passed through the regions of the gods, Brahma, etc., entered the city and the palace in which the body lay. But, alas, when she looked around she could not see her daughter, who had disappeared mysteriously. She recognized the king as her husband and thought that having died a warrior's glorious death on the battlefield he had ascended to the hero's heaven. She thought, by the grace of Sarasvati, I have physically reached this place. I am the most blessed among persons. She began to fan the king's body. The first Leela asked Sarasvati, seeing her, what did the servants of the king do? Sarasvati answered, the king, the servants of the royal household and all the rest of them, are only infinite consciousness. However, since the substratum is the reflection of the infinite consciousness which is real, and since there is a conviction in the order of fanciful creation, they recognize one another. The husband says, she is my wife, and the wife says, he is my husband. She could not go in her own physical body to the new realm because light cannot coexist with darkness, and as long as there is in oneself the blind notion of ignorance, wisdom does not rise. When the wisdom concerning one's ethereal body arises, the physical body ceases to be recognized as true. This is the fruit of the boon that I granted her. The recipient of the boon thinks, just as you have made me think by your boon, so I am. Therefore, she thinks she has reached her husband's abode in her physical body. One may ignorantly see a snake in the rope, but the rope cannot behave like a snake. Sarasvati said, only one who has arrived at wisdom can ascend to the ethereal realms, O Leela, not others. This Leela does not possess such wisdom, hence, she only fancied that she had reached the city where her husband dwelt. The enlightened Leela said, let that be as you say, O goddess. But, please tell me, how did the objects acquire their characteristics, like heat in fire, coolness in ice, solidity of earth? How did the world order, Nati, first arise, as also birth and death? Sarasvati said, dear one, during the cosmic dissolution, the entire universe having disappeared, only the infinite Brahman remains in peace. This infinite being of the nature of consciousness feels I am, and then I am an atom of light. Thus it experiences the truth of that statement within itself. It also fancies the existence within itself of the diverse creatures, and since its nature is pure and absolute consciousness, that fanciful creation appears to be a real creation, with objects of diverse characteristics in strict accord with the fancy of the infinite consciousness. Whatever, wherever and however was conceived or fancied by the infinite consciousness during that first creation, all that has remained there and in that manner and with those characteristics even now. Thus was a definite order brought into being here. In fact, this order is inherent in infinite consciousness. All these objects and their characteristics were potentially present in it even during the cosmic dissolution. Into what else could they dissolve? Moreover, how can something become nothing? Gold that appears as bracelet cannot become formless entirely. Thus, although all the elements of this creation are utter emptiness, yet whatever element was conceived of in the beginning with whatever characteristic, such order has persisted until now. All this is only from the relative point of view, for, the universe has not been created at all, and whatever is the infinite consciousness and naught else. It is the nature of appearance to appear to be real, even though it is unreal. Such is the order, Nati, in the universe, that nothing until now has been able to alter it. It was the infinite consciousness itself that thought of all these elements within itself, and it experienced them within itself, and that experience appears to have materialized. Sarasvati continued, according to the order that existed in the first creation, human beings were endowed with a lifespan of 1, 2, 3 or 400 years. The shortening or the lengthening of the lifespan is dependent upon the purity or impurity of the following factors: country, time, activity, and the materials used and consumed. He who adheres to the injunctions of the scriptures enjoys the lifespan guaranteed by those scriptures. Thus, the person lives a long or short life and reaches its end,